Hey everyone, let's understand the difference between a class variable and instance variable. So we have already seen that instance variables are created inside the init method, inside the constructor, and they belong to each object individually. So let's go ahead and create one. So I'll create a class. I'll name it as dog. Let's write the constructor. And here we'll give self, and then we are going to give one additional attribute as name, and here we'll assign the name to name. Now if I create objects for this class, so let's say d1, and I'll give the name as, let's say, buddy, and let's create another one as in d2. Let's give the name as max. So here the variable name belong to each object d1 and d2 individually. As you can see, they have different names. But let's say in any case, if you want to declare a variable and you want it to be shared, then you can declare a class variable and it has to be outside the constructor. So here, for example, let's go ahead and declare this variable as species, and I'll give the species as canine, and this is a class variable. So now this variable, this is going to be shared across all the objects of the class. So here now let's say if I print d1 dot species, and if I run this, you can see we got the species as canine. But if I print the species for d2, the d2 dot species, I'll get the same result. So that means the class variable is shared across all the instances that are created inside that class. And also generally you won't see the class variables getting accessed by the instance name. It is the best practice to access it via class name. So if I do this dog dot species and dog dot species, just by looking at it you can figure out that this is a class variable and not an instance variable. So here you can say that class variables are shared and instance variables are unique. And also as it is shared, so let's say if I go ahead and update this, then it is going to get updated for all the instances. So if I make it as mammal, and if I save this and run this, it's gonna update all the instance. But let's say if you specifically want to change it for, let's say, one of the instances, you would have to specifically refer it. So what you can do is you can just, for example, let's say for d1, I don't want the species to be mammal. I want it something else. So I can access it d1 dot species, and we can go ahead and update this. So let's say if I can print alien here. But then for d1, we would have to access it with d1. If I save this and run this, now we have different species for both the instances. But let's say if I would have not changed it, then it would have referred to the initial value of the species. So if you want to change it, you can do it like this. So let's go ahead and see one more example. I'll remove this print statements and I'll remove this as well. And let me create one more object here. Here I'll create an object and I'll name it as Tom. Now if I want to count how many objects are there or how many dogs are there, I can introduce a counter variable here. So I'll take a class variable count and initialize it with 0. And in the constructor, because the constructor is called every time an object is created, so every time we are creating any instance, we are sure that the constructor will be called. So we can just keep on incrementing the counter. So I'll do something like this, and here we can go ahead and print the count. There are total. Here we would have to access it by class name. So I'll type in dog.count and let's just save this. Now if I go ahead and run this, so as this is a class variable, we have to access it with class name. So dog.count, and if I save this now and run this, we'll get the output. So that's it for the session. Just keep in mind that instance variables are for per object data and class variables are for shared values, and you can use class variables to track object creation, shared configuration, etc. And assigning to a class variable on one object creates a new instance variable. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next